Hey everyone, today we need to talk a little bit about commodities. We have alluded to it before. In fact, we've talked about it quite a lot for the past 6 months, both on the public channels, but also certainly to our client communiques, really on a weekly and a monthly basis. And I wanted to look at it now mostly through the lens of sort of the bullish posturing that we still see in commodities in not every single part of the commodities space, because it's a very diversified space. Some of the stuff has gone parabolic as inflation has increased and demand and supply has gotten basically been squeezed. But I want to look at this through the lens of both the investment aspect of it all and also the trading aspect. So let's have a look at this. And we're going to specifically look at two particular commodities. One of them being oil and the related equities within that space. And then we're also going to look at silver and some related things within that space as well. First of all, one of the questions that I think we all need to ask ourselves is, are we in a new potential commodity super cycle? I'm not so sure we are. I think it's a very difficult question to answer, a difficult sort of posturing to get to from my perspective. But I think a lot of people can agree that inflation is here, and with that inflation, various commodities will see a move higher, including the price of oil. But it also has other implications as debt gets piled on and so on and so forth, which is part of the reason why we might see something like silver work as well, which of course also has a industrial use. So let's have a look at this. We're going to start off with oil, and I have a bunch of charts here I want to show you. There's no particular order, but let's start off with oil, and I'm going to quickly bring this one up on its own. We'll look at the futures contract. Doesn't really matter. It's all the same optics. But what this is here is what's called a monthly chart. And I say monthly, each one of these bars is 1 month. And this chart goes back all the way due to, the line that I drew here goes back to 2008. So that's, 13 years or so. And you can see we've been in quite the bear market. And it appears to me that we're, at least for a while, breaking out of this bear market. Again, a lot of this has to do with developed economies coming out of the pandemic, or at least appearing to be coming out of the pandemic. Demand comes back online, anything from jet fuel to industrial to driving to whatever, as we're getting more mobile again and doing stuff. So that's the optics in a monthly chart. So when you see the monthly chart do something like this, that's pretty powerful. If you zoom in this a bit closer, you look at the weekly chart, you start to see other patterns emerge. And this is the purely technical optic, but we found that people have an easier time understanding stuff by looking at charts than if we just go through the macro stuff, which tends to be a bit boring for some people to want to get their heads around. This is the weekly chart, and here you could draw some other lines if you want to be, just focusing on drawing lines like this, which is basically telling us that we're about to break out, or could be about to break out, maybe the better way of putting it. You go into the daily chart, and this becomes even more apparent, and I'll just show you this like this. You can see we've been consolidating now for really since March. It looks like we want to move higher. If you want to play this through the lens of an equity or an ETF, I have one example. You can look at many others, pick your energy stock, but one of them that I like to show you is the ticker symbol OIH. This is the oil services equities wrapped up in an ETF for you to buy if you choose to do so. Same deal here. I made a multi-year chart. I made it a weekly chart, and you can see we're coming out of this base, breaking above a multi-year downtrend. It looks pretty nice. You zoom in a bit closer, you look at the daily chart, you see something quite similar, not surprisingly, than what we saw on oil. Here too, we had a nice move to the downside, been consolidating previous resistance, then became support, and it looks like we want to break higher from here. So that's as much as oil goes. But that's not the only thing that looks good here. You look at something like silver, and I know silver gets a bad rap for being very volatile, which it is. It can get stuck in trading ranges and get chopped back and forth. All true. So we always say if you're going to play silver, either have a macro view. Always have a macro view, understanding that it's a move that you want to play through the lens of at least multiple quarters, maybe multiple years. And don't be too technical. It needs a lot of breathing room. It is volatile. And luckily, retail investors can use the SLV ETF, which is what we're looking at right here. So the ticker symbol is SLV. You can see the chart, long-term chart. This is a weekly chart. I drew the lines. We had a nice breakout there last summer, so the summer of 2020. We've really not done anything since then. We've been consolidating, frustrating people, making people doubt themselves and their ability to analyze anything. That's what silver tends to do. And it looks to us now like it wants to move higher. If you are one of those crazy people that thinks that silver itself isn't volatile enough and you want to sort of up the ante, there's another ETF you can look at. It's the ticker symbol is SILJ. You can look at in the upper left-hand corner here. If you look at the screen, SILJ. This is silver junior miners. It's like platonic. It's crazy. But if silver is going to go higher, there's a really good chance these things go higher a lot more in percentage terms. So what I did here is I took a monthly chart. This is a long-term chart going back to 2013 or I guess 2020 since the inception of this ETF. Made it in a monthly chart, and you can see nice basing part consolidating for the past, really since the mid part of 2020, and it looks like we may be starting to accelerate to the upside. So just wanted to give you some aspect of how you can look at the commodities where I think there's still a lot of tailwinds on parts of the commodity space that hasn't gotten overheated yet. We think oil and silver, for quite frankly somewhat separate reasons, are likely to do quite well here through the lens of the next, let's say, a few quarters. Let's look at it that way for right now. But we do actually think that particularly silver has a longer-term bullish story here as well. So I hope this makes sense. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Like this video, whatever you want to do, or whatever you can do, and wherever you're watching this from. And we'll see you back here in the next video. Thanks for joining.